Well, for those of us who are here for the first time today and weren't with us last week, since it was Valentine's Day, we talked about what love is. We talked about what love is. You know, I'm not going to sing the song today, but we talked about what love is, and we looked at 1 Corinthians 13, verses 4 to 8, and how Paul tells us what love is and what love is not. So last week we covered about what love is, and today we are going to be talking about what love is not. And before I continue on with my sermon, I have a cute little video I want to play for us so we can dim the lights.
Love is like over a billion stuff. Helping someone even if you don't want to. When your parents or your teachers don't tell you to. Giving away stuff that you really, really like. If they wanted toys, I should. Sale, toys, and smiling and saying good things about them. I should say, you have very nice clothes on. I hope my mom. I played with another person on the playground and she didn't have anybody to play with. And people are living to be feel like I should do it to someone else. Because Jesus did the same for us. Just like Deuteronomy says you will have them do to you. That you should treat the other one just like I've been treated before. Not like bad, but the times I've been good treated. Nobody really wants to play with somebody who's being mean. Being kind is helping those in need. Give them some food. Get fish and bread and green beans and peas and apples. I'll ask my mom or dad, can we go get food for this hungry person that found? Love is hugging your mom and helping her wash the dishes. I just get the water can and just spray them. People show me love by holding my hand, and they also give me a kiss on the head when I'm asleep very lightly. There's people that don't get love in other places of the world. You help them. Just help people. If we show people love, they can spread it all around the world. Okay, come here, Mommy. I'll show her something. I'll show you something. Come here, Mommy.
I thought that was a little cute video on what kids think what love is. So last week we talked about how the biblical idea of love is kind of like how I describe a pay-it-forward drive-through kind of love. You know, where you're in the drive-through and someone ahead of you pays for your order. You don't know that they paid for your order until you go up front, right? Until you go up to that window. And you don't realize that they've done that until they've driven away. You know, when someone pays for your order, they don't honk their horn and flash their lights, making it known that, hey, I paid for your coffee today, you're welcome. No, that's not how it works, right? They just calmly drive away, and before you realize it, they're gone, and you probably will never meet them. You'll probably never be able to say thank you to them. But that's what the biblical kind of love is. It's not to be bold, it's not to make yourself known, but it's to be kind. So we talked about 1 Corinthians 13 verses 4 to 8. And we're going to turn there this morning. 1 Corinthians 13 verses 4 to 8, it says, love is patient. Last week we talked about being patient in those that we love. And we know that we talked about how God really doesn't test our patience, but he builds up that anticipation within us when that thing arrives, right? So when we love someone, we got to let that anticipation build up within us. Love is kind. We talked about how being kind is being useful. It's pretty simple, but we overcomplicate this verse. Love is kind. It's just as simple as that. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. We talked about how love always rejoices over truth. It doesn't just take sin and put it under the rug to hide it, but love rejoices in truth that we are set free from that sin. And we talked about how, then we see how Paul changes his words. He said, love is always these things. He says it always protects. It always trusts. It always hopes. And it always perseveres. Love never fails. Amen. But where there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be stilled. And where there is knowledge, it will pass away. So what we talked about last week is how in the chapter before, Paul is telling the people of Corinth that gifts are good. Gifts are good, but as we see here, he says, the prophecies, they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be stilled. And where there is knowledge, it will pass away. But Paul says to the church of Corinthians, I have something so much better. Love. Love will never fail. And last week we asked ourselves, do I love like this? Do I love like this in my marriage? No, that's a hard one. To be patient with your spouse, right?
Right.
To be kind to them? Do I love like this in my marriage? Do I love like this in my relationship with my children? There's that patience again that plays an active role in our relationship with our children and grandchildren. Do I love like this in my relationship with my parents? Do I love like this in my friendships? And lastly, do I love like this in my relationship with God? And I hope by the end of all of this, we can say, yes, I love like this. We talked about how Paul tells us that the perfect kind of love here. And that's sometimes hard for us to understand because we ourselves are not perfect. No matter how hard we try, we will always fail at something. But if we follow this, what is laid out in 1 Corinthians, then we can have that perfect kind of love in our lives. We ourselves will not be perfect, but at least our love for other people can be perfect. And we talked about last week how Paul gives us a recipe for a love that will never fail. But just as Paul gives us that recipe, it's our job to follow that recipe that he lays out for us. In chapter 13, we see what love is. You know, love is patient, love is kind, and jumping ahead, it says, love rejoices in truth. Love always protects. Love always trusts. It always hopes. And it always perseveres. And love never fails. So Paul gives us this recipe for loving people. And we need to follow that recipe in order to get a love that never fails. But sometimes we falter and we substitute the ingredients. Instead of using, we substitute trust with doubt. We let doubt enter into our marriage. We let doubt enter into our relationship with our kids instead of always choosing to trust. We substitute these ingredients, but when we substitute trust with doubt, then it's not real love. Because love always trusts. So you can't substitute hope with disbelief because it's not not real love then, because love always hopes. It's kind of getting quiet in here this morning. See, everybody wants love, but we seem to falter in following the recipe that Paul gives us. We find it easy to doubt people. We find it easy to disbelieve people. We tend to substitute the ingredients instead of paying the full price for the expensive ingredients. See, one way that we can strive for that perfect kind of love in our life is to strive to be like Jesus, because he is what love is.
Yes, amen.
So last week we talked about what love is, and today we're going to be picking up and talking about what love is not. Say that with me. Love is not. So going back to verse 4, it says, it does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. So the first attribute of love, of what love is not, we're going to be looking at today is it does not envy. Love does not envy. And the definition of envy is a feeling of discontent or resentful longing aroused by someone else's possessions or their qualities. You know, we've all probably heard that saying, you know, she was green with envy. I mean, probably some of us have envied other people. If we're being honest, we probably even envied someone this week. We looked at someone's life and thought, man, if I just looked like them, if I was just as tall as them, if I just had that cool job with the big bank account, man, if I just had that awesome car that they drive around, man, no, if I just had their driving skills, like that would be so cool. We tend to envy people, and we do it so easily, especially in the time and age that we live in, because social media, you post all the good things, right? You post all the perfect pictures. You post all the perfect Bible verses. Man, I wish I was so spiritual like so-and-so. Yeah. They post all the food, and they make it look so good. Oh man, I just wish I baked like Della. Like, man, she's just baking every day, and I don't have the energy to bake once a year. We tend to envy people because it's so easy nowadays, because with social media, they post everything that looks perfect. We gotta get the right filter, we gotta get the right lighting, we gotta make sure that all the dirty dishes are hiding when we post a picture of that cake that looks beautiful. But then you taste it and realize, man, they are really not that good. We've all probably envied someone. And it's very easy to envy people. But what we see in 1 Corinthians when Paul described what love is, we see that the perfect kind of love he was talking about doesn't leave room for envy in our hearts. See, if we are striving for that perfect kind of love that he describes in our relationships, it can't include envy. Say that to yourselves this morning. It can't include envy. I think everyone's still sleeping. Let's try that one more time. It can't include envy. True love does not include envy. See, love doesn't burn with a desire for what other people have, but instead it sees the blessings of others and finds both true joy in their abundance and contentment of what they have. See, when we look at the life of Jesus, we see that his love wasn't rooted in envy. But But true love is rooted in selflessness, in humility, that doesn't think less of ourselves, but instead thinks about ourselves less. See, there's a difference. You don't think less of yourself, but you spend less time thinking about yourself. See, in a heart consumed by the love for God and others, the focus is outward instead of inward. Let us ask ourselves this morning, is my love rooted in selflessness, or is my love rooted in envy? So we know that Jesus is the perfect example of what love looks like. We talked about that last week. He is the characteristics of perfect love through and through. There's no doubt about that. But when we look at the characteristics of Jesus, one of them is not envy. He was not a person that envied people. But what we do see in his life was selflessness. Time and time again, he is found serving others. He is found healing others. And we see that his ministry revolved around others.
Yes.
It wasn't about him, it was about other people. John 15, verse 13, it says, "Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends." Jesus laid down his life for us, and he calls us to do the same. We are called to lay down our lives for our friends. You know, it may not require what Jesus did. He actually laid down his physical life. It doesn't require us to do that. But maybe, what if it requires us to lay down our phones instead of trying to take a perfect picture of our lives and post it to make someone else envious? What if it means to lay down our tendency to envy other people and choose to be joyful over their abundance and their blessings? See, if true love does not envy, we need to guard ourselves against producing envy in our hearts. And also try not to make someone else envious of our own lives. See, the street goes both ways here. We need to guard ourselves from being envy of other people. And we need to guard it so that we don't try to make other people envious of us.
Yeah.
Because one way that we can strive for that perfect kind of love in our life is to strive to be like Jesus, because he is what love is. True love does not include envy. So the second attribute of love, of what love is not, is love does not boast. We see envy and boasting, they kind of go hand in hand. Envy is all about being consumed with someone else's life, and boasting is all about making the world know about your life. To boast means to talk with excessive pride and self-satisfaction about one's achievements, their possessions, their abilities. That is what it means to boast. Now, I don't know about you, but I am a visual person. And I love using my imagination when I read the Bible, and I thought, what would a person who boasts look like? And I thought, So when I picture someone that boasts, I picture a person that got a t-shirt made with their resume on it, with all their highlights and qualifications, all the bragging rights, and they had it on the front and the back, all the good things that they have done. Look at me. That is what I picture when I think of a person who is boastful. You know, we've met those people, right, in the past where you're 2 minutes into a conversation and you're like, man, it is all about them. You don't really want to talk to them. You don't really want to spend time listening because it's exhausting. But it's just all about them. Well, we see that true love isn't all about you, it's all about them. It's not about boasting, it's about cheering on others. And I'm going to tell you a story today about one time I took my nephew bowling. And I like to do little things one-on-one with my nieces and nephews to make them feel special. And at this time, I took him bowling. And let's just say, he wasn't a very good bowler. Now, if you know me and my dad, we love bowling. We're really, my dad's good, like great, and I'm pretty good, like I'm decent, I'm good. And so me and my dad, we love bowling, but we like to go together because we know how to bowl and we enjoy it. So when I took my nephew and I'm realizing that he's really not having a good time because he's not doing good. And here I am getting strikes and spares, and I'm in a good mood. I'm happy because my score is higher than his. Like, I was so excited. And then I look at my nephew and I see that he's not having a good time. I thought, great. This was supposed to be for him, not about me. So I changed things. You know how when people get a strike, you cheer? Well, I said, okay, Caleb, the next gutter ball we get, we're going to go, gutter ball! So here we are in the bowling alley in Woodstock, and every time we got a gutter ball, we would cheer, and we would get so excited, and as soon as he did, his whole idea of bowling changed. Yeah. His whole feelings of being sad and looking at his score and comparing it to mine changed because, I was trying to get gutter balls too because we wanted to cheer together.
Yes.
Now that's totally changed my whole theology of bowling, and every time we go bowling with anybody, I'm like, okay, we got to cheer when we get a gutter ball. Because, we just don't celebrate the good things in our life, but we celebrate the great things in someone else's life.
Yes.
Amen.
And in that moment, I had to shift my focus from what I was feeling and what I was wanting to do well, and the feeling that I wanted to win, to changing my focus to what my nephew was feeling at that time. See, true love doesn't boast about ourselves, but it cheers on others.
Amen.
So gutter balls are where it's at. But let's ask ourselves this morning, what is my attitude towards others? Do I show a self-love? Or do I show a selfless love? What does my t-shirt say today? Does it say that I am great? That I am the world's best bowler? Or does it say that I love people? Does it say that I have a love like Christ? What does your t-shirt say? What are you boasting about today? Because we really only should be boasting about Him,
Yes.
not us. Because one way we can strive for that perfect kind of love in our lives is to strive to be like Jesus, because He is what love is. Now, I don't know about you, but I want my t-shirt to say, she loved like Jesus. The third attribute of what love is not, we will be talking about today, is love is not proud. Love is not proud. Now, the NIV, it says love is not proud, but the New King James Version, it says love is not puffed up. And then the New American Standard, it says, love is not arrogant. See, the words love or arrogance or haughty are mentioned over 200 times in Scripture. That's a lot. 200 times. Proverbs 16, verse 5, it tells us that God detests those who are arrogant and those who have a haughty heart. 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 2 tells us to have nothing to do who are lovers of themselves. And 1 Peter 5 chapter 5, verse 5, it sums up how God feels about the arrogant attitude. See, God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. So what does it mean to be proud? It's not like when you're in second grade and you're so proud of the picture you drew. No, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the attitude in your heart. Do you have a proud attitude in your heart? To be proud, it means possessing a high or unreasonable conceit of one's own excellence, either their body or their mind. A man may be proud of his person, of his talents, of his accomplishments, or of his achievements. He may be proud of anything to which he bears some relation to. He may be proud of his country, his government, his equipage, or whatever may be by association gratify his esteem of his self. He may be even proud of his religion or his church. He conceives that anything excellent or valuable in which he has to share or which he stands related to contributes to his own importance. And this conception exalts his opinion of himself. So to be proud means that your value is found in who you are, what you are associated with, what you are connected to, what car you drive, what job you have, what church you go to. That all becomes and exalts his opinion of oneself. Are you proud today? So we talked about how envy is all about being consumed by someone else's life. And how boasting is all about making the world known about your life. And being proud is finding your identity, importance in things that you are associated with. Therefore, if love is not proud, then what is love? If love is not arrogant, then what is it? The opposite of arrogance is humility. And when we look at the life of Jesus, we see that he is the only perfect example of what humility looks like. You know, his humility started the way that his life began. Jesus came into the world in but a manger. You know, he wasn't surrounded by kings or palaces. He was surrounded by straw and animals. He came into the world the most humblest way, leaving all that he had to come and die in the most gruesome manner that there was. Yet he did nothing wrong. See, he could have stopped everything on that moment on that cross, but yet he didn't. We see that his life started in the most humblest way, and his death was the most humbling way he could die. Now, Philippians 2, verses 6 to 8, it describes how Jesus didn't use the fact that he was God to his advantage. See, in that moment, Jesus could have been proud. He could have been like, do you not know who I am? I don't deserve this. But because Jesus is truly humble, he truly is the perfect example of humility, he bore that cross. He didn't let his proudness or arrogance in his life stop him and use that to his advantage in that moment. we see that instead he humbled himself. He took on human likeness. He came as a servant, and it wasn't just the beginning and ending of his life that showed great humility, but it was through every action and interaction he had with people. Throughout his whole life, he was the true picture of humility. So let's ask ourselves this morning, does my love come across arrogant? Does my love come across proud? Or does my love show great humility? See, humility means not thinking too highly of ourselves and filling up our minds and hearts with pride. It allows us to put others first. But something we think humility means is that we think humility means weakness. But actually it is great strength when you are humble. So that perfect love that Paul describes here, it does not include envy, it does not boast, and it is not proud. Last week we talked about how Paul gives us a recipe for perfect love, a love that will never fail. And that recipe for love is to be patient. It is to be kind. It is to rejoice in truth. It is to always protect. It is to always trust. It is to always hope. And it is to always persevere. But he tells us also what not to add into that recipe for love. See, a perfect love does not have envy. It does not boast, and it is not proud.
Amen.
And when we're baking a cake, we talked about this last week, we use this as an example. Just like we are baking a cake, just like when we are showing love, we should be wanting to use the most freshest, best ingredients for that cake. We should be wanting to use the best ingredients for our love for other people. But you see, when we add envy into our love, it's like adding rotten eggs into our cake batter. It just makes it rotten. It makes it smell. It doesn't make it taste good. But when we boast about our love, it's like turning the beaters on high max and then making a mess all over the kitchen.
Yeah.
Batter goes flying everywhere. And all it does is just make it messy. And when we are proud, when we add proud into our love, it's like adding sour milk to our batter. It's lumpy and bumpy and it's gross. It's lumpy and bumpy like arrogance and pride. See, we need not only to follow the recipe of what love is, but we need to guard ourselves against from adding ingredients that are going to ruin our recipe for love. When we look at our marriage, are we adding envy into our love between our spouse? When we look at our relationship with our kids or with our parents, are we adding proudness into our life? Are we adding pride? Are we being arrogant? When we look at our friends, are we boasting about our life? When we add those ingredients in, we just get a lumpy, bumpy, gross, messy cake. And I don't know about you, but I don't want a lumpy, gross, kind of messy love in my life. For when we follow that recipe for what love is, we guard ourselves from adding ingredients, we end up with a love that will never fail. Last week we talked about how when you are following a recipe, there's usually a picture for reference of what you're making is supposed to look like when you're done, right? But when we're trying to make that love in our life, our point of reference is going to be Jesus. because he is the image of what love is. So the only way that we can strive for that perfect kind of love in our life is to strive to be like him, because he is what love is. And as we finish this morning, you notice we only got halfway through. We only got halfway through of what love is not. So next week will be part 3. We will be continuing on. But as we finish, let us not forget that love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects. It always trusts. It always hopes. And it always perseveres. Love never fails. And as we finish this morning, we're going to play the first song, I Love You, Lord. And let us ask ourselves, am I loving like this?